So, we are live. This is Francis of Assisi. It's good to see you. How are you?
It's good to see you, man. Yeah, all good, mate. All good. All good. Here in sunny London, enjoying the slightly more pleasant weather. So yeah, things are good, man. How are you?
I mean, I look slightly grimy, don't I? On this, I look kind of greasy on the stream for some reason.
I assume that was just the camera, but
maybe it looks a bit strange. This is cool, guys. So if you're watching this in repeat, this is the first time we've done this, but we're actually streaming to both mine and Mr. Francis' channels, YouTube channels. Both his group, my group on Facebook, my page, his profile, my profile. Maybe this is the way we can start Spengalying and taking over.
By
getting
internet.
more and more people to stream simultaneously. Take over the internet,
Yes.
Do a Google and take over the internet.
Yeah.
What have we got on the agenda today to discuss with the lads?
Well, I suggested that we talk about transformation, about personal transformations. And the reason that I think it's important to talk about that is because, let's face it, the world is going through a transformation at the moment because hopefully we're starting to come out of the pandemic kind of scenario or the worst sides of the pandemic. And certainly in the UK, things are going to start opening up. In many other countries around the world, you know, it's heading in that direction. So we're looking at transformation in terms of the world and in terms of our socializing and so on and so forth. But what about personal transformations? What about, you know, how much can a man or a woman, but for the audience, for a guy, how much can a guy actually transform himself in his life?
I'm just going to move to I'm sitting in a dingy Brazilian seaside town. It reminds me of Blackpool. And there's trucks and horrible things rushing past. So I just moved slightly to get better Wi-Fi.
That's better.
Maybe. Yeah, it's better. Maybe because we're both streaming to each other's platforms, there will be some crossover in the audience, but maybe for guys who haven't seen me before, on Troy's channel, me and Troy met about, I think 6 months ago, introduced by a mutual friend, Cameron Dan, who's filmed for both of us. And my story was I actually trained with a company called Daygame.com 7 years ago. One of Troy's wings was my coach, alongside a couple of other guys. So a lot of guys will know Tom Torero in the industry, John Matrix, Yad. And I've kind of been involved in day game and dating ever since. In the last 4 years, I've spent basically living in the nomadic day game experience, traveling a lot. Typically spending the winter months in Europe, in South America. So Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, and then coming back to Europe in the European summer, but spending very little time in London, where I'm originally from, mainly focusing on places like the former Soviet Union, the Balkans, because lots of older men live there. And yeah, my job is basically to take guys out there and teach them, get them, throw them in the deep end, get them approaching these type of women. I think one of my big regrets, one of my only regrets from learning this stuff was not thinking it was cheating to be traveling abroad. Learning this stuff in London and walking up and down Oxford Street, and like someone else would tell me, "Oh, I've just come back from Finland. I banged the girl from night game." And you'd be like, "That's cheating. That's not the purest way." And it's in hindsight, it's nonsense, isn't it? Because you know the best times I've ever had have been on the travels.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you were talking about that with I saw the Nick Krauser interview, and you were talking about that, and I know exactly what you mean because we bought into this idea of daytime approach, and you know, people were doing it in a very specific way. Certainly in London, it was all on Oxford Street, near Oxford Circus, outside Topshop. And it felt like if you weren't doing that, then it didn't count.
It didn't count.
Exactly. And obviously it does. But I suppose just to introduce myself to anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Troy Francis. I've been working in this field for a number of years now, probably about 6 or 7 years. But before that, I've been involved for 15 years or so. I was on a forum called the LSS, the London Seduction Society, back in the early 2000s, which a lot of people like Krauser and Tom Torero were on, and other people as well. And I just started to really study this kind of stuff. And the reason for that was because I wasn't happy with my dating life. I wasn't happy with the fact that I didn't feel that I had choice in dating. I didn't feel that I had options, you know. And then this thing called game came along, and it sounded interesting. Obviously read the game like many people do. And, you know, I wanted to find out more. And it was really fascinating to learn that there were things that you could learn that would improve your outcomes in the social marketplace. Because before, I'd always sort of just thought, well, you're either really good looking or you're not. You're either a Chad or you're not, and that's it. And there's not really a lot else that you could do. But actually, that I found that wasn't the case. There were things that you could learn, and you could change your outcomes, and that really was fascinating for me.
Yeah, and I guess just following on from that interview that I did with Krauser, it's the first he's done in a while, and it was really interesting seeing his hindsight because he's in a completely different boat now. He's been in the game, he's mastered it for 10 years, he's always looking to come out. But he was talking about this hero's journey, and I guess that's kind of part of what we want to focus on today. Were there any kind of key points from that talk? And we can link it below, so if guys want to check that out. It's really good, really high-level stuff. Not from me, from listening to him, really, and all his insights and wisdoms, but I was mainly talking about lady boys and trying to avoid being banged down dark alleyways in Thailand. It was a bit more highbrow, the information he was giving. But are there any kind of concepts or elements from that, Troy, that you think are worth kind of opening up and discussing?
Well, he was clearly somebody who completely transformed himself as a character, I think. I mean, I don't know him now. Haven't met him, and I certainly didn't know him.
That's interesting. Is that again? We don't want to play too kind of sneaky, bitchy political shit, but has that got anything to do with the fact that obviously you and Torreira were quite good mates, and obviously Carouse and Torreira had a bit of a public falling out? Or was it just circumstance that you never kind of met him?
I think it was partly circumstance because I've just never been, like he wasn't really. I mean, because basically I got into sort of dating and day game type stuff quite early on. And then I sort of dropped out a little bit for a couple of years because I had a girlfriend, and then I sort of dropped back into it. And then by the time I was up and running and publishing articles and, certainly talking about this stuff online, by that point, I think Krauser was not in London anymore. He was probably overseas, in Belgrade or wherever. So it was partly circumstantial. And then, of course, I met Tom Torero, became mates with Tom Torero, and then you get pegged as, right, you're Team Tom then. And there was Team Tom and Team Krauser. And but I was never involved with the argument or anything or whatever disagreements they may have had. I've never had any involvement with that at all. So, I mean, for me, he's obviously, an incredibly astute guy who's written a lot of really, useful, helpful material about this stuff. So, and he comes off as an affable guy as well.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mentioned on the chat with him, he actually comes off as a bit of an arsehole, but I think he deliberately writes in that kind of alpha arsehole style. And so when you meet him, you think he's going to be a bellend, or I did.
Yeah.
Or just quite abrasive, but he's actually not. He's quite a nice guy. It's not even a front, I don't think. It's just, he's a reasonable human being. I think in terms of the material I've read, it's probably he seems to me to have the greatest understanding of all this stuff because he comes from such an analytical point of view. There's levels to it, and it's just crazy the depth he goes into. I'm not suggesting people check out his material; it's brilliant, but I'm not suggesting people need to go as deep as that. And I think one of the elements he talked about, one of the few regrets he had, was he didn't look to build his, I guess, SMB earlier. Because, that was always my understanding, this kind of the first generation pickup guys, because they didn't really focus on things like the fashion, maxing out looks, maybe hitting the gym, getting ripplingly low body fat, learning languages, learning to fight, traveling, all this other, learning musical instruments, all these other value adds. They had to get to that level with game. And that is fair play to Nick. He said a couple of things he would have changed would have been got his ass in shape and also got his fashion on point, which he didn't do. So it was interesting hearing him actually kind of admitting that.
Yeah, he must have gone through a couple of big transformations though, because if you think about it, he was married. He was in Japan. He was married to the Japanese woman. Then he came out of that, and then he basically taught himself game. He studied this stuff, he practiced, and he became expert in that. And then, as you say, and he was talking about it afterwards, he sort of came to a point of almost getting a bit fed up with game,
right?
And I can appreciate that because people go ups and downs with this stuff. But then he focused on his fitness, on the anti-aging stuff, on his trying to actually change his character as well. And that's pretty admirable. I mean, you have to say he's looking pretty good now, isn't he? He's obviously done a lot on the fitness side of things.
Yeah, I think he does. We've got some comments here. Ampy Pom, Chad Tusk, thank you very much. Nick Suleiman the Magnificent. Nick falls out with many people. Dandy in the underworld, trying to stir up some drama. Why did Lorena punch Torero? I mean, for the record, you know, Tom taught me a lot. I'd love to get him on. I've asked him a couple of times to do stuff, and he is one of these guys who's very much a lone wolf, and he kind of appears in the mist, doesn't he, and then disappears again.
Yeah, so, I mean, to be honest, I haven't spoken to him for a little while. He's out and about doing his thing. I think Dan spoke to him actually the other week, so I'll hopefully try and catch up with him soon. But yeah, he's doing his own thing. He's not really doing a lot of content of this kind, I don't think, at the moment. So you know, whether that changes, we'll see. But
I must say, like, yeah, people always ask me what I think about him, blah blah blah. I think he's brilliant in terms of the fact he was, you know, for me, one of the first guys I saw who's English, who was a bit nerdy, who it just wasn't American. It was so relatable. You know, because Oxford as a mega geek, and you know, genuinely a guy who was able to distill quite complex concepts down into bite-sized chunks. Yeah.
Did you ever get into the RSD stuff at all?
I watched like some of it, but I remember watching Owen RSD Tyler's like started watching his like things where he's talking about roots in the ground. It was all a bit existential. I mean, it seemed good in theory, but honestly, I mean, I think for me the main influences were a website called Good Looking Loser, which was hardcore self-improvement. 60 as a challenge was a big thing, and a lot of Torero stuff, especially his podcast. I find them incredibly inspiring because he was always saying, "Oh, I'm sitting in a fucking beach in Thailand, or I'm sitting in a square in Poland watching hot girls struck past with a summer blossom falling." And I was I was still working my corporate job in sales at the time. And I was just listening to those when I was supposed to be working, or I was kind of multitasking, which inevitably I did neither thing well. But it really inspired me to start going, because that was in the phase where I was doing day game, but I was kind of like, oh, it's cheating to leave London, all this nonsense. Yeah. Which obviously it isn't. But yeah, he's been a big influence. I'd love to get him on. Whether it will ever happen, I don't know. You know, he is his own person. He's quite like he likes to be quite polarizing, quite divisive. I think he quite likes to be that nomadic lone wolf that's hard to get hold of, maybe at times. I think that's probably just how it is. So who knows? You know, fingers crossed for the future. I'd love to have him on.
Yeah, absolutely. What was I going to say about that? I've lost my train of thought now, but yeah, he's a great guy. He's very analytical. I mean, he like you said, he was able to break the concepts down in a really user-friendly way. He's not quite of that same level of analyticalness that Krauser is, but it was somewhat more user-friendly, and he just seemed like a really regular guy. And like you said, his podcast very, very entertaining and very aspirational as well in many ways.
I actually thought in some ways that was for me the most inspiring stuff. The podcast, because it was very good.
Well, I did like the some of the RSD stuff. I did like. There was a period of time, probably around 2010 or maybe a bit before, when I was watching RSD had their new videos coming up every day, and they'd have all the different instructors. And you know, you'd be like, "Oh, there's a new Brad video, or there's a new Alex video, or something," and or a new Tyler video, or whatever. And I did quite like them. They had some good people on board for a while. But the Americanness, I think there's always that bit of a barrier for us, isn't there? For the Americanness of like, oh my God, guys, you know. Whereas somebody like Tom, it was very much more accessible.
Yeah, I agree. And I think another element that's always kind of put me off the RSD stuff is this kind of godlike. They like to be pedestalized. They like this, you know, to walk into a room, very American, and have everyone clapping and cheering, and they are almost like demigod status. I hate that. I personally hate that. You know, when guys come up to me, I'm very humbled by it. If they're like, oh, I watched some of your stuff, it's actually helped me. I've started day gaming. You know, I immediately, if they start trying to pedestalize me, I'm like, come on, mate, what are you doing? Let's have a shot, let's have a beer, let's have a bit of fun. It's the opposite, you know, and I think it's very easy with things in life to develop a bit of an ego, isn't it? And I always felt, maybe I'm wrong, but I always felt watching the RSD stuff, this was kind of part of the image of the whole thing. It was like demigod status. And on that note as well, I mean, I find the whole thing hilarious, to be honest. People slagging people off in the industry as a whole, I just think it's pathetic. It's like, come on, lads. All we're doing is talking to birds. Put yourself on YouTube. Like, let's get on with it. Like, who gives a monkeys? People are always. I think when you get more successful, people try and chip away. You've had a number of guys who like try and do stuff on me or try and tear me down a bit, and it's just, you just can't take it personally. But I'm careful never to respond, because I just don't want to fall into the same trap as what they're doing, like, you know, trying to focus on the negativity. And it's just like, come on, why don't you focus on your own shit? It's just, I just find it strange.
Yeah. Well, I've had some of that as well. And it's sort of like, it's the whole thing is a waste of time, really. And it's certainly a waste of time responding and going down in that rabbit hole, because, and also for those people as well, you know, really, why spend so much time criticizing other people? Why not spend that time looking at yourself and sorting your own life out? It just seems an incredible waste of time, unless you're trying to build a brand off it and you're making some money out of it. But even then, for me personally,
I agree. I just think it's like, fucking hell. Can you not put out some more productive stuff than trying to spend your time building a brand by ripping people down? I mean, what the fuck are you up to? I don't think it's a really sustainable. In my view, I don't think it's a sustainable way to build a business or to build a brand, just ripping other people down. You know, like, it may work for a bit and you get some views and stuff like that, but it's just like, you need to be providing some value, really. And, you know, there's no value in that kind of stuff. I agree. So, guys, the topic for today is, obviously it's an open Q&A. We're not going to disqualify you for asking other questions, but we may prefer to focus on basically transformation, the hero's journey with game, what we've learned along the way. I mean, combined, we've probably got almost 25 years of experience doing this stuff, I'd say.
Quarter of a century,
probably older than some of the people actually watching this stuff. So any questions on that, rack our brains, I'm more than happy to answer them. Yeah. I mean,
the thing for me was that I was I don't know quite how it was for you in the early days, but I was completely hopeless as a say teenager going into my 20s. I mean, I was completely, and I was very.
Let's do some awkward tales. Everyone loves a failure story. Any kind of standout failures?
I mean, you know, it wasn't even failures. I was very, very socially withdrawn, really, as a kid. You know, it wasn't that I didn't have friends and stuff. I did, but I was sort of like, I was always quite introverted. I wasn't really a big social sort of person. As far as girls were concerned, what I would always do at school would be, there would be that one particular girl who I'd sort of fixate on, you know, I'd sort of have a one-itis for her, if you like. And actually, there were times when other girls were interested in me, but I tended to just push them away, because it was like, no, if it's not, you know, Susan from history, then I'm not interested. And so I wasted a lot of time with that. And then going to university and stuff like that. I mean, I suffered from a sort of a depression for a period of time, I think, and I was really unable to start to socialize with people. I was unable to start conversations with girls, let alone try and then get knocked back. I mean, I wasn't even at that level. I found it very hard. Even something like holding eye contact with a girl, I found really, really difficult. And that went on until kind of my early 20s. And then I was able to break out of that. But if you'd have said, if somebody had said years ago, oh, you know, Troy's going to go on and, you know, end up having quite a successful dating life and, you know, be able to go on and be quite effective in social situations and stuff like that, I think most people that knew me at that time wouldn't have put their money on that. Do you know what I mean?
Really?
I think, yeah. So this is the point, because like, I think that you can really, really change in terms of how you are. I don't think that we are just stuck as one sort of, you know, you're this sort of person and that's it forever. I think you can really change.
I agree. It's not quite the Tom Cruise-esque transformation, is it? I think he was apparently voted the least likely to succeed in his class in like twice in a row or something, and ends up going to be one of the biggest action stars of the century. But it is crazy, and we'll get onto that kind of Robert Greene-esque 48 Laws of Law 25. Recreate yourself in your own image, and how there's probably no journey in life more rewarding as a man to do that and max out all these areas. It sounded like we went through a similar situation with uni, because I got glandular fever, and I basically just didn't change, didn't do anything differently when you're supposed to kind of rest for 6 weeks. So I developed this thing called chronic fatigue syndrome. Basically had me like bedridden for like a year, 14, 15 months, just garbage. You know, I was similar to you. I really didn't make the most of uni. I slept with a number of girls, but it's very much they picked me. I was completely clueless as to what I was doing.
Yeah,
I remember one particular horror show incident, which I just love it because it's cringing and everyone loves these stories. But I was watching. I was doing history at uni. That's what I studied, and it was Nottingham Uni. For those of you who know UK universities, so decent uni. You used to go into these big lectures. It was a campus uni, so in this middle of some green fields, basically, huge fields, and you go into these big auditoriums, to listen to these history lectures. And I'd seen a girl, cute girl, English, freckly, prissy. Even by now, the standards of me having travelled to places with very hot women, I'd still say she was pretty attractive. And I'd been watching her for about, or just kind of making note of her for 2 or 3 months. And but I just didn't have the minerals to make a move, right? Because I got into the day game and all this stuff when I was 27. I was 22, 23, clueless, lots of anxiety. I'd never really read much game stuff, didn't know what was going on. And I remember seeing her after about 3 months in the local shop in Nottingham Uni. And I was I saw her, I just remember it, she was in there, she was looking at some magazines, and I was stood on the outside. I just remember recognizing her. She had her face sideways, and I saw it. I was it's Jenna or whatever she's called, right? Now's my time. So I'd kind of psyched myself up, did some deep breathing, which must have looked weird to other people. I walked in, taps her on the shoulder. She turns around with these big eyes, just being listening. And I was all I could muster was, I've been watching you, and then pause, and then for 3 months. And the look of terror on her face, I've never seen such terror. She literally turned, scampered out the shop, and I never saw her again in any of the history lectures. I actually think I scared her to such a degree that she left university, or she just quit that course. At that moment, I realised something needed to be done. It was also, for me coming out of uni as well, day game, uni culture in the UK is a big drinking culture, and the problem is actually. And I've spoken about this before, but having grown up with 3 younger brothers, going to a private school, all boys, and then primary school and then secondary school, basically had no exposure to talk to girls, at all. For years, and so you're just awkward around them. And there are times you are going out, English culture, especially growing up, it's get your fake ID, go to the pub, get boozy. So when you do actually finally have interactions, you're not learning anything because you're hammered, right? And you don't know what you're doing anyway. So essentially, really, I started learning how to date and how to interact with the opposite sex at age 27. Right. I don't know if that mirrors kind of the experience you have.
Well, because I think it's something that I think some people do really need to learn it. Maybe not everybody. Maybe I think there are guys who are like naturals, and they just seem to know, and it just seems to go very easily for them. But I wasn't one of those guys. And I mean, I remember with one girl at school, I would it was really embarrassing because I kind of fixate on these particular girls. I got one-itis for these particular girls, and then sort of just hang around them and kind of just hope that something would happen. That was basically my strategy, because I didn't understand that the guy was meant to lead. Basically, I didn't understand that as the guy, you kind of need to, the onus is on you to make things happen. And so there was one girl I remember at my college before I went to university, and I would just sort of hang around with her and find excuses to talk to her and all this kind of stuff. And I remember, and then one time I actually bought her some flowers. This is so cringy. It's so cringy. I actually sent her some flowers, and then it was in the college the next day. It was all the buzz was like, oh yeah, she's been sent some flowers, blah blah blah. And this girl who was, I think, knew both of us, said to me, she said, oh, I hope they're not from Troy. Because obviously she got these flowers. Yeah. Because obviously she got these flowers. I'd sent them anonymously. I think it was like a Valentine's Day or something. And she was like, "Oh, this is really nice. I got these flowers, but I hope they're not from Troy." Because obviously she knew I fancied her. And but the level of delusion that I had, I was just like, "Oh, okay, well that's all right." Because at the moment, maybe she feels like that at the moment, but I could bring her around, like further down the line, sort of thing. But the thing is, right, the key problem, right, is really, really ineffective strategies, really, really ineffective way, basically having no clue of how to actually try and make something like that happen.
Right. Yeah, we won't comment on the RSD stuff personally, but it's quite funny seeing these comments. Neither confirm or deny that I agree with this stuff. Yeah, I remember speaking to someone else again, before I remember watching the daygame.com, going on their website, seeing this stuff, and I was going to be like, well, I'm going to go and do it. I bought their product, which was Date Against the Machine with John Matrix and which is actually pretty good. It stood the test of time. I think it's a very good beginner day game product. But when I tried to do it myself, couldn't do it. So at that point, I was like, right, I can either continue like having marathon wank sessions in front of the laptop, at my parents' place, and relying on my one lead a year. It used to be, because this was pre-Tinder invention. I'd go out to clubs or bars, get hammered with my mates. I'd get about 3 phone numbers a year. And the average lad now who's actually, not doing day game, who's been in coronavirus, it's kind of back to when I was at university in that sense, or just after university when I left. There's no social circle. That's dried up. Tinder hadn't been invented. You could go to clubs, but it was literally you get 3 or 4 phone numbers a year. And it's hindsight. You're like, oh my God, the scarcity you live in. But anyway, I remember going on the boot camp, and it was great. So it was basically on the ass going, right, fucking approach. And that's what we do. And that's why we're going to run a London boot camp. The second last weekend of April. I believe it's April the 20th. Thursday, April the 20th. Let me just bring it up on the old calendar. Oh, no, sorry, May the 20th. I'm getting confused. Thursday, 20th of May to the 23rd. Me and Troy running one. We're going to take 4 students. It's going to be us 2, sick ratio. 4 hours a day, Thursday, all in field. 4 hours Friday, 4 hours Saturday, 4 hours Sunday. We'll do it at a discounted $19.79. Get in touch with either me or Troy and grab a space. Deposit will be 25% of that. So basically around £500 deposit, remainder is payable as the training starts. But yeah, for me, I remember just absolutely shitting myself going out there. And we can talk about your first 3 approaches if you remember them. But as John Matrix pointed out, that absolute smoker, like 6 foot tall worldie, big boobs, like pretty face, smoking a cigarette, looked quite French, like hot Parisian French, that kind of arrogant looking at her. I remember going up to her, feeling like this kind of bile come up because I was so nervous. Basically never spoke to a hot girl sober, actually, like genuinely, in my life, up to age 27, right, first cold approach. And he was like, just go and say she's nice, and that's it. And I remember like kind of, like almost like feeling like I vomited a bit, but not paying attention because I was so in the so far in flight response. And I stopped her. Initially, she was like, she seemed to like it. And then she got this weird look on her face. And I quickly asked for the number. She gave me a number. It turned out to be fake. And I went into a shop window and looked, and I realised I'd accidentally vomited bile, and it just spread down the side of my face. It was like a car crash.
Wow,
but how were your first 3 approaches? Like, do you remember doing those? Were they on your own? Were they with a wing? Did you do any training?
Well, mine was a bit sort of like my journey was kind of was varied, because the first point at which I started to get some success in this area was actually not even through game, but I started working in bars. And when you work in bars, obviously you get that kind of like the advantage of standing behind the bar. You're a little bit more sort of you're the focus of attention, etc., etc. So I had that kind of so I did that, and I started to get some success through that. But the problem was that I was just unable to.
There we go. It just faded out. The image just went on my side for a second. Could you still see me the whole time?
I could see, you'd frozen out, you'd frozen out. So I was saying, I got doing daytime. Sorry, I started getting some sort of success, basically because I was working in bars and I had that social proof. But then the problem was that I couldn't replicate that in a bar or nightclub situation, because without the social proof, I had no idea what I was doing. And then I started doing approaches in London when I learned about game, and I was going out with other guys, going out with wings and things like that. I think you've frozen again. I think he's frozen again. So I would go out with wings. So I found basically a group of guys online who were into going out and meeting women and getting good with this stuff. And I started to basically go out with them, and I started to practice the skill set. And it was kind of like the first couple of approaches I did, because I was being told to go in and approach by guys who had more experience than me, by guys who were, kind of like knew what they were doing, sort of thing. And the first couple of approaches I did, actually, they went surprisingly well. I remember being out in Leicester Square, which for people who know London is like one of the main nightlife type areas in the centre of London. And I remember being out in Leicester Square, and I went to approach, be sort of pushed by this group of guys. Oh no, go and talk to her, go and talk to her. So I went and approached this girl, and it actually went quite well. And it was so surprising to me. It was so amazing to me that the sky hadn't fallen in, that I hadn't, ended up being sort of like struck by lightning or something by just going and talking to this girl. Well, it looks like Tusk has been vaporized by the deep state. So I guess we will continue on. Tusk has taken the black pill. I can't put these comments on the screen because he's controlling him. So what are we talking about? So yeah, and then with day game specifically, because obviously Tusk is a day game specialist. The first time I ever did a daytime approach, day game was seen as being this separate sort of entity in game, although ultimately it's all kind of the same stuff. Ultimately, it's all about going up, talking to a girl, creating rapport, flirting a bit, and then exchanging numbers, or moving things on to the next level. But the first time that I'd done day game, day game to me was this incredible sort of revelation, really, because there was this sense of like, what you mean? You can actually just go up. You can actually just go up and talk to this particular girl you can just go up and talk to anyone. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm back.
Good stuff.
Dodging between hotels. We've got 3 for the lads.
Very nice. Very nice.
Let me get into position. Wait. Okay, sorry for that, troops, but the Brazilian internet, a bit like the entire infrastructure here, is a little bit shady at times. But we're back on. Is that okay, Troy? Can you hear it okay?
Absolutely, yes. I was just whittering on about my first few approaches, and I was saying that I did like approaches in night game and stuff like that. But the first time I ever did a daytime approach, because I was reading on the forum on the LSS, there's this thing called day game, and you can go and talk to women. You can go up to a woman that you find attractive in the daytime and just start a conversation with her. And it seemed like a revelation. It seemed like this incredible thing. And the first one I did was actually at Euston Station. It was in the Boots on Euston Station, and I saw this woman or this girl, and thought she looked quite nice. And I screwed up all of my courage. And remember, there wasn't so much stuff on YouTube or videos at that point. So it was all people describing what they did on the forum. And there was this line at the time. You just went up and said, "You're beautiful." Just go in and just be like, "Hey, you're beautiful." So I just walked up to this girl and I said, "Hey, I just saw you. You're beautiful." And it was revelatory in a sense, because the sky didn't fall in. I thought I'm going to get arrested, or I'm going to get, this is something terrible is going to happen. But I did it anyway. And she smiled and she said, "Oh, that's really, really nice." And she said, I am married, and she showed me the ring. But she said, "That's so nice that you felt that you were able to come up and say that to me." And I said, "Well, I'm just a sociable sort of guy." And then we chatted for a little bit, and then that was it. So it wasn't like, a success or anything, but it was really powerful because for a start, that showed me that you could do it, that this thing was actually possible. And secondly, it showed that, really it can be a positive experience for both parties, even if it doesn't go anywhere. So that was an incredible thing.
Right. Okay. So fast forward, what stage of this stuff are you at now? I mean, are you kind of, listening to someone like Krauser? Because you've obviously been in and around this stuff for a long time. And what are you looking for, I guess, over the next few years? What's kind of the journey going to look like?
Well, I think I want to do more travel. I'm not particularly at that point of saying, "Oh, I just want to settle down and get a pipe and slippers and stuff like that." I mean, I respect what Krauser's saying, and I think a lot of people would be at that point, you know, a lot of people would understandably get to that trajectory and say, okay, right, so now I want to, you know, I want to get out of this. I want to settle down. I want to find the one, or whatever, however you want to put it. For me personally, I think I don't think it's necessarily going to be like that. I think it's a question of like looking to see, okay, so what kind of lifestyle is possible? What kind of lifestyle is possible for a guy who's, you know, maturing, let's say, you know, because it seems like society will tell you, well, there's only really one path. At some point, you throw in the towel and you have 2.4 kids and you get married and that's it, you know? And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you really want to do. But it seems to me that with all of the technological advancements that we've got and relatively easy travel, COVID permitting and all of that, you don't have to follow that model anymore. You really don't. So, and I've got friends who are not part of this or anything, but, you know, I've got a friend who was married for a few years and then they ended up getting splitting up recently and divorced. And he's a single guy now and he's having an amazing time as a single guy. He's in his late 40s, whatever, having an amazing time as a single guy. And he's not in any hurry to sort of get married again or do any of that stuff. You know, he's into travel. He was in Mexico before. He's into, you know, going to around Europe, different places, just having a fantastic time. And, you know, there's always this impression, isn't there, even on the internet, you get guys in the comments going, yes, but when are you going to stop doing this shallow stuff and start, you know, do something more meaningful instead? But what does meaningful actually mean? You know, like you could have a meaningful life where you're traveling and you're having these wonderful experiences. That's equally valid as the traditional model, right?
Yeah, I mean, none of this. There's that. I don't know what school of thought it comes from, but essentially, there's nothing. Everything is just subjective, right? And we add meaning to it. You know, you see a swimming pool, it's just a piece of water and a bit of made up, you know, man-made hole. It doesn't mean shit. We add that meaning. Oh, yes. I like swimming, so I see that in a positive light. Oh, fuck, I had a bad experience when I'm a kid. I'm not going to go near that pool. Mr. Jenkins back in the day, you know, behind the school bike shed, don't go near the swimming pool. Yeah, it just depends. I'm getting carried away with nonsense. But here's a question. If you guys started day game all over again, what would you have done differently? Not stalk girls in shops at uni, not thrown up on my face on the first approach, and started traveling very early on. And if I had my time again, I would have learned this stuff as soon as I could have done it. You know, 18, 19, I would have got out. It's about becoming comfortable around women. It's about understanding how to flirt, how to be socially and emotionally intelligent. And the more, guess what? The more you practice socializing, the better you get at it. It's that simple. The more you can do it sober, you treat it as human Sudoku in a variety of situations, the better you get. Everything you can possibly want and need in life is through human connection, through, you know, interacting with other human beings. If you suck at socializing, you need to go and learn how to socialize. Because that's what this is, really, isn't it? It's about being an expert socializer. An ape that socializes effectively. A hairless ape that socializes effectively.
Yeah, I think it is about socializing, isn't it? And that's the key thing for me. I became much more effective at socializing generally. And obviously, primarily, the focus was on getting better with women, but equally socializing just anyway with other people. When I started doing, you know, game or daytime approaches, nighttime approaches and things like this, it really had these knock-on effects in other parts of my life. I remember being at a wedding one time with, and my sisters were there. I've got 3 sisters. And the sisters were there, and it was, you know, what these family wedding type things are like. It's all a bit awkward. Nobody knows each other. There's all these random people there, and I was just going up to people and starting conversations with them and go, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" and blah blah blah. You know, nothing, not rocket science or anything, but I was just going in there and, you know, being relatively effective in that social setting. And I remember one of my sisters going to me like, "Oh, Troy, you that's you're able to do that. That's really impressive." And I'm like, "Well, not really, but it is something that has got easier for me because I've practiced it, because I've been able to go out and, just learning that skill set in a dating context then has positive benefits in other areas of my life."
I agree. And it's crazy. Again, the test for being a masculine man these days is not, you know, our grandparents' era of you go off to war and sit in a trench and go over the Western Front at 18. It's the test of being a brave man in women's eyes is, oh, he can say hello to me sober and have a conversation. I mean, I like these odds, right? We live in a good time.
Yeah,
fucking hell.
Yeah.
I know it seems scary to learn to do this, lads, but if that's the test for being a masculine man and you can sleep and date with extremely attractive women just by learning that skill set, I have zero idea why you wouldn't learn it. And that's exactly what we do. We teach this to guys full time because we love it. We're still going through our own respective journeys with it. That never ends, right? Life is just one journey, a series of experiments, and then suddenly game over. But I like these odds. What do you think of this comment, Mr. Francis?
Men are implicitly discouraged from leading male-female interactions in this modern environment. One of the leading causes for dysfunction. Well, I know what he's saying because there's been a lot of, talk about this kind of issue in the media in the UK over the last few months and stuff. I think I think there's a difference between what you read in the media and what happens on an actual street level interaction kind of plane, in the sense that there are, on a higher level, there are all these conversations about the genders and how they interrelate, and men should be like this, women should be like that, blah blah blah. But then if you go out on Wigan on a Friday night and everyone's like having a booze up in the street, like you don't get a lot of that going on. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a real gap, I think, between what people say in The Guardian or that people will say on Twitter or whatever, and what's actually going on in the real world.
Have you been out much in Wigan on a Friday night?
I haven't actually, but I have been out in Blackpool. Have you ever been to Blackpool? That is a...
yeah, I have. And this is basically like a Brazilian Blackpool. It's a place called Porto Seguro. It's a bit salt of the earth. It's a bit like kind of you step out and you think you're going to get robbed. But actually some very hot kind of Brazilian booty walking around, like favela booty. With big earrings, tattoos, and obviously because we're massively stand out as the only foreigners here, it's a good place to be. Suleiman, the Magnificent, says, Troy Francis, you're old enough to get your vax and start travelling.
Well, watch this space. Watch this space. I'm not actually really, because it's over 50s at the moment, I think. But yeah, more or less.
James and Troy, do you think day game allows a guy to punch above his weight? I consider myself a 5, but I'm into girls who are objectively above my attractiveness. The majority reject me. It's probably not to do. I mean, there's so many potential kind of factors that interlock here, but. Again, like everyone that, it gets in touch with me and Troy, comments on the YouTube stuff, comments on the live streams, get someone to review what you're doing. Because if you haven't had teaching from day game, there's probably a number of things you're not doing correctly. And it's also good just to have some objective feedback on how you look, your style of grooming. Most men are fashion illiterate. Just get some feedback, right? Get some objective feedback. Your mates, as much as I hate to tell you, are probably not going to give you the real answer. They're going to either gun you or just try and be nice, but they're not going to tell you, and your mum certainly isn't going to give you the real answer. She's going to be, oh, you're such a nice boy, and then give you like a stripy Sailors t-shirt to put on, which is going to guarantee you don't get any action at all. Never get fashion advice from your mum. And any girls in your social circle aren't going to be upfront with you either. Not because they're being knobs, they just won't be. They won't give you proper advice. So anything to add to that, Troy?
Well, I think that day game does allow you to punch above your weight, for sure. I think that's pretty well documented, isn't it? Almost every guy that you speak to will say that he gets better results through daytime approach, day game, or cold approach in general than he does through certainly through the dating apps, which is quite a good measure, right? Because if you go on Tinder, if I go on Tinder and I swipe on Tinder, whatever, I've had some success on Tinder in the past, but in general, it's a bit thin gruel, really. It's not great. And, you go on these awkward dates and the girls don't look how they appear to look in their pictures and all of that sort of stuff. Certainly in terms of quality, by far the best results I've got have been through daytime approach, day game, just actually going up to her, starting a conversation with her, etc. Without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think that worked. I think one of the reasons for that is because you get a couple of additional points just basically by having the balls to have gone up and started that interaction in the first place.
We're back. Did that work?
Yeah.
Oh, good. It's probably my terrible Brazilian internet again. Carry on, please, sir.
No, I was just saying that you definitely get, you definitely punch above your weight through doing day game as opposed to the dating apps. And I think that's partly, I don't know if you agree with this, but I think that's partly because it shows something about your character. It shows something about your personality to be able to go up and just start a conversation with somebody that you've
Hello.
It shows something about your character, doesn't it? It shows that you got balls. It shows you got a bit of chutzpah. So yeah, day game I think definitely works better for a whole number of reasons, but you could certainly get better results. I think.
Do you think, just playing devil's advocate, do you think the creme de la creme of the hottest women in the world can be accessed through cold approach, or do you think you need to be rolling in high-end VIP social circles?
Well, I think in theory they can be accessed by cold approach, because most of the time they go out, they've got to go out the house. Most of the time they go down to, I'm probably the same as you. I've met girls who are models. I've met sort of B-list celebrities. I've met sort of, all different types of women who are just out and about, like in Whole Foods or going to the grocery store or going to the gym or something like this. So yeah, I mean, the great thing about day game is it gives you that opportunity to access people that perhaps you wouldn't have necessarily met otherwise, and you don't have to go to the effort of like getting into the VIP room or getting the table, buying the bottle, and all of that stuff.
A hack, isn't it? I'm yet to see a Victoria's Secret model in my local Lidl, but I will stay tuned in case she is in there hiding away behind the Wagyu. Hello to Mr. Napier. He's stalking us as usual, isn't he? Old Jack Napier.
Good to see Jack Napier.
And he said hello to Dave, who's sitting opposite me, glowering at me. Oh, there he is. There's Dave.
Good to see Dave. Good to see Dave as always.
Good to see Dave. And you're going to do maybe a chat with Dave at some stage, are you, Troy?
Yes, and I'm going to set that up. Sorry about that. I'm going to set that up. Maybe later this week or something. I need to get back to Sam on that, so I will set that up.
Nothing to worry about that. I'm sure he can find his time. Here's a good question. WMJ. So if you're traveling and don't speak the local language, does your opening line always have to be speak English? Has James been learning Portuguese or Max in the fact he's foreign? I would actually say you can try and speak in English. But you can. I'm recently in Brazil. I think I've been saying fala inglês when I start, which is do you speak English. You don't have to, though. I mean, I think if you're going to spend time in a country where you find women attractive, so somewhere like Russia, somewhere like Argentina, somewhere like Colombia, and you're immediately going back to the place, it becomes a bit embarrassing if you don't speak the language. Like when I was saying to Brazilians, I've been to Carnival 5 times in Rio and New Year's, and they were like, so you can speak Portuguese, right? And I was like, no. It just became a bit embarrassing me to the point where I was like, right, I need to do something about this. My Portuguese is by no means great. Sam, who with Fluent Socials, is very good. And there's another guy who speaks fluent, an English guy with it as well. But it's enough to get by to the point where I can have conversations with like dated women where actually I might have been ruled out because they're just like, come on, this is too stupid. He doesn't speak a word. He's not making any effort.
Yeah.
So when you're in a place for longer, you can access the kind of social circle. You need to be able to speak the language, I think, to access this social circle, to hang out with other friends, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, sure.
What else we got here? Any other thoughts on the kind of hero's journey transformation stuff, Troy?
Well, here's something, right? So a lot of people would say it's this kind of almost like sort of free will versus determinism type thing. So a lot of people would sort of say, well, look, you're stuck with what you've got. You look a certain way, you're a certain height, you're a certain type of person, and that's kind of what you've got to work with, and that's it. But do you believe that's true, or do you think that actually people can transcend themselves? Because I believe that people can transcend themselves. I think you can become a very different sort of person by working on yourself and by putting yourself out there and having social experiences.
I mean, or it's just fixed.
Yes, as opposed to it being fixed.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious, right? It's not fixed. I mean, there's nothing. Is there any credible argument for saying it's fixed?
Well, no, but you get a lot of guys online who will say, well, it's all about looks, it's all about height, it's all about X, Y, Z, and and if you don't have those particulars in place, then there's absolutely nothing you can do to improve your social success.
Yeah. You still there, Troy?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? Yeah?
Yeah.
I encourage guys to check out TED Talk by a person called Angie.
I think he's frozen. Fleeting Apparition says, Dobry Večer to James and Troy. Greetings from Russian frozen wastelands.
Can you see me okay now, Troy? Is that okay?
Could see you. Okay, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Francis. You can. Is there a delay?
There is, yes.
This is hilarious. I'm doing my best. I might go back to the table with Dave. Hold on.
I think the important thing, though, really is to recognize that where you start from isn't where you end up, you know? And there's a lot that you can do to change yourself. There's a lot that you can do to transform as you move forward. And I'm certainly a very, very different character. I'm certainly a very different character to how I was when I was sort of 18, 19, 20, for sure. Sam's leeching all the bandwidth on Pornhub.
He is indeed. What were we saying before that about free will versus developing?
Well, no, I was just saying, look, that I mean, of course I believe that absolutely, you know, we are the masters of our destiny. We can go out, we can make changes to ourselves. We can have you're not fixed as a person. You contain multitudes. But there is a prevalent school of thought online that, and particularly tied up with this looks, money, looks, money, status type thing, where it's like, well, if you're not born as that dude, if you're not that Chad, then you're never going to get any action. So you may as well just give up. And I don't believe that to be true, because I know from my own experience that you can, as the same person, you know, you don't look different. You don't look particularly physically different. You might change your hair, you might change your clothes and stuff like that. But you can change your personality and you can change the way that you come across socially. And that pays huge dividends in terms of the way that you're received.
Yeah, I think, you know, whether or not, even if there was like a 1% chance that we can you hear me okay? Or is it quite loud?
Yeah.
Okay. Even if there was like a 1% chance, it was 99% certain that we couldn't change our position and we couldn't get better at anything in life. But there was a 1% chance we could, knowing that probably you only live one existence. I would still say they were good odds, because what other fucking choice have you got? We know we're not coming out of this game alive, right?
Exactly.
So we might as well make the best of a bad situation.
Well, yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And like, I never thought, as a kid, I never thought I was particularly great. I never thought I was good looking. I wasn't particularly like athletically built. I didn't, you know, I was shit at socializing. I was rubbish with girls, all that kind of stuff. But then when I was in my early 20s and I'm sitting, you know, I was in Manchester actually at uni, and I'm in Manchester and I'm just like, well, sod it. I'm not going to tolerate just accepting what I think my fate is. I'm going to do whatever it takes in order to have an awesome life, or in order to have the kind of life that I want to have. And, you know, and it's amazing what you can do through mindset and through changing the way that you act with other people. It just makes such a huge, huge difference.
I completely agree. And I'm going to put in a guy who's quite inspiring, who no one would have heard of before. But it's a good little thing to put in while we're here, which is... this is me getting technical with StreamYard. Look at me being technical. Does that work?
It's coming up, yes.
Maybe guys can't see that. I don't know. Is it super small?
It's a little bit small, as she said.
Basically, this guy, I'll try and find another better one. But this guy is basically like motivational speaker, no arms, no legs, right? And he's pulled a worldie. And he's got no arms. I mean, he's the definition of a chicken nugget. He, you know, if you could buy him at McDonald's, he'd be in a packet as a chicken nugget. He's got no arms, no legs. He's called Nick Bajugic, something like that. I'll try and get another photo of him with his hot wife, and it's just like, fucking hell. If this lad can do it, come on guys, you can do it. Do you know anyone who's like that? Who's like, you know, to kind of dismiss the whole black pill movement of it's only about looks? Do you know anyone who's very, very unfortunate looking, Troy, who does pretty well with girls?
Well, there are various examples. I'm not sure if that's that guy that you're showing there is the example. Rich Cooper often shares an example of a guy who was also in a wheelchair, et cetera, ended up getting, you know, a very attractive girlfriend, etc.
Sean Stevenson.
Yes.
Sean Stevenson. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, he's done well.
We also know somebody in my colleague John from Modern Life Dating. He's got his own program and, you know, chooses guys and stuff like that. There's at least one guy in that who's, you know, disabled, in a wheelchair, very disadvantaged in terms of, you know, that's starting from that baseline. He's doing really well as well. So there are definitely examples out there. The problem that you get, though, is that the naysayers will say, yeah, but these are outliers.
Well, maybe they are outliers, right? But it's just like, mate, she's all right. Like most guys, you went out on a Friday to watch the circus. You end up pulling her home. You'd be quite happy with that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, completely.
We digress slightly. What was our original point? We're getting carried away with newfound ability.
Richie Rich here is saying, I'm not sure anyone on the LMS forums, I think that's Looks Money Status, is saying that if you're not born Chad, you'll get nothing. They're saying you won't get objectively attractive girls 7 to 10. Surely a fair assertion. What do you think about that?
So, Richie Rich, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
He said, I'm not sure anyone on the forum is saying that if you're not born Chad, you'll get nothing. They're saying that you won't get the objectively attractive girls who he says are 7s to 10s.
What does it even mean being born Chad? I mean, it's just it's such nonsense, isn't it? Born Chad. Does he mean good looking? Does he mean like?
I assume he means good looking. I think he means good looking.
Is it just a term for basically good looking?
I think so. I think it means good looking. Yeah. So what he's saying is, if you're not good looking, although how do you measure that? But if you're not good looking, you won't get girls 7 to 10 in terms of looks.
I mean, it's barely even worth answering because I just think it's such nonsense. Again, yeah, I guess guys that don't understand this shit are the guys that put comments like that, because I am a good looking guy, right? And I wasn't pulling a fucking muscle at uni. And I was the birds I slept with, fucking hell. Like, they look like a who's who of, like, if you played human or toenail, you know, you wouldn't know the answer. I mean, it was getting into cold approach, learning that it's about learn skills like learn charisma, confidence, social standing, power, maxing out your body, you know, getting lean, learning languages, adding value to life, living an interesting reality. You can't change your height. I'll give you that. Although one former client of mine has done. He's had his legs stretched. Spent 6 months in a Turkish hospital. So he's gone from 5'8" to 6'2", which is random. But it's just so narrow-minded. Like, I know guys who are facially ugly, who are fucking powerful men that get laid like bosses. They're the CEOs of companies. You know, they're in fucking good shape. They earn fucking big dollar. They dress like fucking bosses. Do they really give a fuck about the fact they've got a slightly puggy nose? I mean, it's crazy that people just sit online whining about this bullshit. Get out and do something about it.
Know what I mean? Yeah, completely. It's such bullshit. But I mean, you've probably been in the situations where you go to, say you're in a bar or you're in a nightclub or something like that, and you know there are sometimes you will see like very good looking guys who are there, and they are sort of standing in the corner, not really doing anything, just surveying the scene. And then you'll get some dude who's very charismatic, not necessarily the best looking guy, but he's having a laugh, he's bringing the party sort of thing. And those kind of guys get a hell of a lot more attention actually than just somebody who's being very good looking and just standing there and not really doing anything. Now, if you've got both, obviously that's even better. But the point is that it's so much more than just a simple assessment of aesthetic attractiveness. You know, there's so much more to it than that. It's how you put yourself across. I couldn't agree more. And I've taught guys who are actually models. Genuinely, they do modeling, and they can't pull a muscle because a bird sees them. Tall, good-looking rooster, you know, very good-looking, and they go over to him expecting him to have game, to be confident, right? And he's just shy, and he's just not got his shit together, and women will judge that. Maybe some of them are going to like that shy guy, but most of them aren't. Most of them like a fucking boss, a fucking winner, a guy who's like the center of fucking attention. Not an arsehole, but a guy who owns his space, who owns his reality, who's like, fuck it, I'm going to boss this short time I have on planet Earth. Yeah.
Right? And it's so hard to kind of convince guys of this, aren't they? Because guys are so negative and set in their ways with all this stuff.
Yeah.
But again, it's the guys who sit online who aren't willing to take action. I mean, I hate to say it, but 99% of guys that watch myself and your channel and every other channel out there, they're armchair gamers. They love a good whinge. They watch a bit of material because it tricks them into thinking they're taking action. Write some notes, write some notes on the game. Yeah, file it away Friday night. All right, I could go out next weekend. Supermodel walks past the house. John wouldn't touch him with a barge pole. Absolutely. I mean, people are just living in denial because it's easy to stay locked in that little prison, isn't it? That misery of self-comfort, because it requires no action in the human brain naturally, because we're built to, on evolutionary level to try and survive. It tries to keep itself in a comfort zone. You're going out, getting rejected, getting a girl flaking on you, being told she's not interested. It's painful. Most guys can't suck up that pain because we live in an era where men are fucking soft.
Yes. Yeah. No. Exactly. But I actually fell into this way of thinking when I was younger for a period of time. I fell very much into. I mean, there was no such thing as like the black pill then or anything like. It wasn't a thing. But I fell very much into that way of thinking for a period of time. I was like, well, I'm unattractive. I'm ugly. Therefore, no, this girl has rejected me. Therefore, no other woman will ever like me because they must have fairly standardized tastes, right? So if I'm not good enough for her, then I probably don't make the fucking grade, and therefore my genes are going to be weeded out of existence, and that's it. But the thing about that line of thinking is, well, it's not, for a start, it's not true, but it's very comforting in a weird, perverse way, because you can just sit there and you can think that stuff, and you can get off on the self-pity. Self-pity is one of the most powerful drugs there is.
Really?
Yeah,
so I didn't know that. Is there a chemical reaction in the brain that actually kind of makes you feel good?
It's something that they talk about in alcohol recovery groups and drug recovery groups. Like self-pity is very, very insidious. It's a very, very seductive thing. You can sit there and on the one hand you're miserable, but on the other hand there's something quite nice about it as well, because it gives you, for a start, it gives you an opportunity not to take action. Because if you're sort of cloaking yourself in this idea that I'm never going to get anything anyway, you don't have to take the action, you don't have to test that assumption in the real world, and so you never get any more negative feedback. And you can just sort of, and if you're on a forum and you're chatting to guys about this and just saying like, oh, poor us, it's so bad being us, then you're in a little weird comfort zone in a way, and it's just no good for you.
That's fascinating. Have you found yourself dipping through stages of that with game or relationship?
No, I did when I was younger. But that was before I learned social skills. But then once I learned social skills, and that's the thing, James, right? What you're talking about. I was, when I was in Manchester, there was a period in the early days, I could not get a girl to look at me. Do you know what I mean? I was getting
Manchester Uni.
Yeah. And I was, I was going to the clubs, the bars and stuff like that. I couldn't get arrested there. Do you know what I mean? It was just, there was nothing. And then because my mindset changed, and because the way, and look, I've talked about this on my channel, but what happened for me basically was I ended up like doing a lot of drinking, doing some other like, naughty substances and stuff like that. And that really changed my mindset. And I'm not for one second advising guys watching this, oh, that's what you should do. Because for me, it was a very self-destructive path. And, it's clearly not sort of like self-development advice. But what happened was, inadvertently through that, I kind of rewired my brain a bit. And I developed this kind of IDGAF, I don't give a fuck attitude. And when I was out, then girls started to react to that in a much more positive way. And I was meeting and attracting decent girls. The first girlfriend that I got in Manchester, this blonde girl, really, really beautiful. I remember I was working in this nightclub at the time. The doorman at the club were like, well, how the hell did you get her? Because I'm this like skinny guy or whatever. And they're like these jacked, like, yeah, whatever. And they're like, well, how the hell did you end up with her? Like, what the hell happened? And I'm like, well, but what it was because of my attitude and the way that I was coming across. So my lived experience proves to me that you can transform yourself. It's not just like, because I didn't look any different. It wasn't like I suddenly became, Leonardo DiCaprio overnight or something. I didn't look any different. I wasn't taller. I wasn't more rich. I wasn't, any of these things. But my attitude and the way I was presenting myself changed, and then people started reacting to me differently, and girls started to react to me differently off the back of it.
Yeah, I think it's important because, obviously guys who haven't seen you in the flesh. I mean, Troy's only 5'1", so he's an example of a borderline dwarf who's pulling hot muscles. But no,
absolutely.
All jokes aside, I'm just going to grab my charger, Troy. Maybe this is a good. Did you answer this question already?
No, I can talk about it.
I'll be back in 2 secs.
So Fleeting Apparition says, does that kind of transformation always entail a change in one's social circles due to inevitable resistance from the outside and the whole crabs in the bucket thing? That is an interesting question. I think it can do, yes. I think it really can do. The point is that if that's happening, or if you think there's some danger of that happening, you really need to change your social circle. You really need to get out of that little toxic kind of prison that you're in with those people. I mean, for me, it was quite fortunate because I was in Manchester, which is a reasonably big city. So I was away from a lot of the people that had known me earlier when I was at school together. And I'd broken out into this new social grouping. And also as well, the great thing about cities is they're anonymous and they are you don't know people. You've got that sort of sense of anonymity, that sense of privacy. And so it's very, very easy in an urban setting, in an urban situation, to reinvent yourself. And so I think if you are having trouble reinventing yourself as a result of having a social group that's trying to hold you down, you need to find a way to break out of that, either by moving, going somewhere else, or just hanging out with different people for a while.
Yeah, I'm just going to read this and see if there's any thoughts I can add without obviously doubling over to what you said. Yeah, so you probably already covered this, Troy, but I have my friends, a lot of my original friends from school and uni, my close friends actually from school, but they didn't come along on this kind of day game journey thing. A lot of them think it's a bit strange. I didn't try and drag them into it either because it's a personal journey, right? You need to change. And you're trying to drag people from different walks of life. Like we all go through that stage, don't we? Where we try. I'm just laughing. I'm tired. Yeah, we try and drag people from our past into kind of like forcing the rational male down their throat. Go on, read Tomasi, and they're just like, "What are you up to?" They don't want any part of it. People have to find their stuff on their own, right?
I think one of the most difficult things to do is to drag yourself away from your social conditioning, because society, the idea we have about society, it's all sort of imaginary anyway. If you've got a group of mates and you've known each other since school and you're still living in that same small town and everything, then naturally you're going to be in a certain place in that hierarchy. So if you were the guy who was, a bit geeky and you were never any good with girls or whatever, they're just going to pigeonhole you in that way. And it is very, very hard to break out of that. And this is why I think a lot of people who maybe watch our stuff and they're more critical of the stuff, I sometimes wonder where they're living and what the circumstances they're living in are, because if you're in some small town somewhere in the back of nowhere and you've got the same group of mates that you had when you were like a kid, then sure, the sexual market there is probably going to be really tough. I totally get it. But that's why it's great to go and move to a big city. That's why it's great to be in London or to be in Moscow or to be in Rio or to be, to go somewhere where people don't know you, to break out of that mold. Because part of personal transformation is breaking that mold. And you've got to sort of shake things up a bit to do that, I think. It almost links in with the death ground thing, doesn't it?
Death ground chassis. I was just trying to Google the quote as you were saying that about take control of your circumstances. And it's a very masculine thing too as well. We live one life. You determine how that plays out. We're traveling with a guy, me and Sam, called Eddie. He's a nice guy. He'll probably appear on some of the YouTube stuff. He's not a coach, but he's been kind of learning day game. He's an English guy from Scunthorpe of all places, not the most beautiful of towns. And he chose to move out to Brazil because he was like, fuck this. But he said 99% of people who grow up there, small town syndrome, and they never leave, right?
Yeah.
Because they just don't think about it. But we can pretty much do whatever we want in life. The only thing holding us back is the old Roosevelt quote, isn't it? It's that men are not prisoners of fate, just prisoners of their own mind. We create our own mental prisons, and we tell ourselves, we can't do stuff or we shouldn't do stuff, and it's fucking nonsense. So this, bring it round to old Robert Greene. with his 48 laws of power, law 25, recreate yourself in your own image. You have to sit down and map out what the fuck that is, and then go after it, because no one is going to spoon feed you that. No one's going to help. No one's going to deliver that. When it comes to day game and dating, that dream girl isn't going to fall into your lap. It's not that build a dreams nonsense. Build it and they'll come. It's absolute fucking bullshit. If you get to a certain level of power, obviously, if you're a guy from One Direction, 25 million subscribers on Instagram, followers on Instagram, yes, you're going to get fucking women messaging you. If you're Russell Brand, if you're fucking DiCaprio. But if you're like 99.999% of the population that isn't in a position of mega power, because you're not a rapper, you're not a basketball player, you're not a rock star, right? You're just a guy who wants to make a good stab of it on this short life we have on planet Earth. Then you have to go and make it happen. And that starts every day, in my opinion, with cold approach. Going after it. Why do these pictures look familiar, Sam? Sambo, do these two look familiar?
Get them on.
Couple of decent looking roosters.
Get them on.
Fal Inglés. Oh, Fal Inglés. Say hello. Hola, Fal Inglés. Eu me lembro você ontem. Eu acho que eu me lembro você ontem, mas eu não sei. Really? Yeah, nós estávamos aqui ontem.
Sorry, I didn't remember this.
Oh, you didn't remember my beautiful face.
Just seen a huge spike in the viewership then. Just when you
really? Just when what was I ranting and raving about? I can't even remember.
Well, I think sometimes you've got to break the bloody mold, haven't you? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you've got to make these moves, and if your environment is holding you back, sometimes the best answer is to get out of that environment. I mean, I don't know if you get people contacting you. I'm sure you probably do. And they say something like, oh, I'm in this town and there's like, 20,000 people in the town. It's really small. How do I get great with day game? And I mean, with the best will in the world, the answer is probably move, isn't it?
I think so. I'm just going to quickly move again because I'm just need a plug socket. So bear with me 2 seconds.
Okay.
If there are any questions we can do while I'm moving, probably there is. There we go. There's one for you, Mr. Francis.
Well, it's not a great one for me because I haven't. Although having said that, I have certainly done acid, and I remember I did acid quite a lot when I was younger, and I remember one occasion where I'd taken acid and I was having a really tough time. I was having a really tough time because I'd split up from a girl and I was finding it hard to get over that relationship. I was finding it hard to get over, to sort of put the pieces back together after the split. And I remember one time I was in a club in London and I took acid, and it sort of rewired my brain. Over the course of the night, I was able to sort of take a more of a bird's eye view on that situation, take more of a bird's eye view on what had happened. And it kind of just put the pieces back together. And then the next morning, when I started to come down off the trip, I was like, right, okay, I know what I've got to do. I've got to go back. I'm just going to get on with my life one day at a time. It may be hard at parts. Some parts will be better. It doesn't matter. I've just got to go through this. And I went back and that taking that acid trip, it actually helped me to rewire things and to sort of get myself on a better track. So, and again, I'm not endorsing that for anybody watching, but I'm just saying that was my experience. Now with psychotropics though, I certainly have friends who've done ayahuasca and stuff like that, and they speak very highly of it. And I can certainly see the logic behind it, but it's not something I've tried. It's not something I've tried as yet. But James, what's your thought on that?
On ayahuasca?
Yeah, psychotropics.
Or on ayahuasca? Or?
Well, I was just saying I haven't done it.
I'm off to do ayahuasca in November. Yeah, I'm off to do it in November. I'm going to do. It's going to be intense. It's 7 times in 14 days. They throw in 2 peyote sessions as well, and a poison frog session, and a couple of cambo sessions. So I'm either going to be, meditating on top of a mountain, floating above it because I'm so enlightened, or I'm going to be in a straight jacket and a padded cell, and that'll be the end of me. So it's going to be an interesting one. I'm a big fan of MDMA. Breaking down social barriers. You feel a lot of love for people, don't you? So for me, that's always been a winner. It'd be quite an interesting one doing LSD in a club. I'd find that quite intense. I'm not adverse to a candy flip, which is a bit of LSD and then you that kind of hits, and then you do some MD. But that's something I'd kind of do at a festival, more to just get mashed off my tits rather than kind of an eye opener.
I think that I mean this was back in the day sort of thing, and I think it's not really advised that you do acid in clubs. I don't think it even was then, to be honest. It was sort of like it was something that I did. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but funnily enough, it just had this weird effect on me where it really just reset things in my brain, and so I can see from that experience and a bit from weed and stuff like that, I can see how these substances can help you in terms of like just hitting that reset button and allowing you to get a more meta view on the way that you're thinking about things.
I think so entirely. I seem to have gone yellow like a character from Simpsons. I'm not sure why.
It's not too bad. It's not too bad.
No. What else, Mr. Francis? Anything else to cover?
Well, Lame Duck says there's always a suspicion that expats are Letrozole drunks. Is that not a problem? Well, what's wrong with that?
Nothing at all.
You are a Letrozole drunk, aren't you?
I am. I definitely am. Question for Troy. Have you ever smoked weed?
I didn't inhale.
Okay. Sound like Bill Clinton there, give me that one.
Yeah. No, I have. It's not anymore, but I certainly did back in the day, yeah.
We've been going an hour and 16 minutes, lads. If you've got any final questions for me or Mr. Francis, far away. I'm well aware this internet connection is pretty suspect, so it may not last very long. In fact, I think it may have gone. Blink.
Well, he may be, he's frozen again. Benny says, is rapport necessary in cold approach? I think an element of rapport is necessary, yeah, for sure. An element of rapport. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do some special like rapport type stuff. You know, the rapport can come about just by the way that you put yourself across. The rapport should come about because, you know, you walk up and you're well put together, you're a decent guy, and she just senses that from you immediately. Now, the other thing that you should do as well is that if you follow the London day game model, then after you've reached the hook point, that is to say, after she has, she's clearly interested in you, then you can turn the volume down a little bit. You can be a little bit less playery, a little bit less gamey, a little bit more normal, and you can build a bit of rapport then when maybe you're going to talk about, you know, what you do, what you're up to today, why you happen to be in that particular supermarket, that particular street, coffee shop, whatever it is, what she does, etc., etc. So you start to make it a little bit more solid rather than just this kind of like jokey, playery type thing. Suleiman says Troy Francis has the patience of a saint. Absolutely. Not exactly day. Oh, Nathan says not day game related, but what's your fitness and nutrition like? Well, fitness I would say is pretty good. I do obviously, you know, weight training, resistance training, and quite a lot of cardio as well. So I do quite like doing a bit of the old cardio, which I know people have different views on, but I just love running. I love to go out, go for a long run, clears my head, you know, it's good for the mental health and so on. I've got some weights here. Obviously the gyms have been closed in the UK, so I've been using some weights in the other room, which has been pretty cool, but the gyms are opening again on Monday, so I'm looking forward to that. In terms of nutrition, I'm probably not as good as I could be. I'll admit it. But I do try to eat my fair share of fruit and veg and so on and so forth. Okay, well, it looks like. Oh, here he is. He's back. Nearly back. It looks like Tusk is saying the internet's done. So we may have to call this to an end in a second.
Maybe.
Yes.
We are back. What
Back.
the odds of that? I thought we were going to be. That was it. Done. I've hotspotted from my Brazilian SIM card to the laptop. I should have just thought of that before. You live and you learn. All right, so, circling back round, guys are still watching, so we might as well just keep going if you've got time to do so, Troy, for a little bit.
Yeah.
But anything else to kind of add to this whole Law 25, recreate yourself in your own image, that kind of player's hero journey, our own stories, any kind of tips for the lads out there, anything else to kind of qualify in that sense?
Well, I guess the interesting thing, right, is so if you're a guy and you're watching this and you are not where you want to be in your life, how do you actually change that? How do you actually become somebody else?
Well, let's take our average guy, right? So my average avatar, they're probably actually, I don't know, what is your average guy who watches your audience? Do you know kind of, or what's the guy that would come to you for coaching normally? Have you got a rough fit of what that would look like a criminal profile, an average
I'm looking at sort of probably slightly, 25 to 25 up, probably slightly older guys, generally speaking. Generally, guys in their 30s, going into their 40s, and so on. Like you, professional guys who just want to get better with this stuff. Really,
I can't get over how white I look. I look like Casper the Friendly Tusk. But it is, I assure you, I'm not that pale. I haven't been dipped in radioactive waste. It is purely the fact I'm sitting out onto a very bright street in Brazil. I think similar to me as well, like probably the guys that usually come to me actually have their shit together to some degree. Like they are working in a decent job, they're going to the gym, they're relatively okay looking. So it's like, right, they've realised Tinder sucks, and they realise like most countries around the world, right, they're about 8 months off, the nightclubs not being open. So they want to learn how to speak to women. And I guess the thing that we were also going to touch on is the way the world, the only constant in life is change, right? So the way the world is going to go now for, the foreseeable is people are able to work wherever they want, even if they work for a corporation or where they work for themselves. They're realizing that actually, I can put myself anywhere in the world. Why wouldn't I put myself where somewhere I find girls attractive and learn how to speak to them?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think just for, I'm speaking for myself here as much as anybody else, but I think you need to take a look at what's happening in the world now, because obviously things are going to start to open up at some point. I mean, some countries are ahead of others. I think Britain, it's looking like we're going to start opening up. Well, next week it opens up a bit more than in May, and then going into June. So great. But what's going to happen further down the line? Is there going to be more of these restrictions coming back in, later into the autumn, into the winter again? I mean, like it's getting to this point now where, unfortunately, we kind of just don't really, we've got no control. We kind of don't know what governments are going to do. And you could be sitting in your country and then suddenly they're going to go, oh, there's a new variant, so let's just close everything down again for 10 months. And so I think it's now more than ever, it's really important to find a way to be a bit anti-fragile, to find a way to, to be able to just get out, basically, if something like this happens again, which maybe it will. So and like you're saying, but the good news is that I suppose that the pandemic has taught us that actually this is possible, because even people who are employed in corporate jobs are working from home, but they're able to work from elsewhere. And, I know people who work for big companies in the city who are working from other countries now, because why not, right? If it's an internet connection, you can be anywhere. So we need to take this as a lesson, I think, and to say, okay, like we've got to start creating our own lives. We've got to start creating, the trajectory that we want for ourselves, and not leaving it up to somebody else.
So then circling back round to, I guess, what we were going to talk about, how is someone to go about it if they are kind of starting this and they're like, fuck, what do I focus on?
Well, I think for me, just speaking for myself, for me, it all started from getting better with socializing. And when you break that down to the really basic steps, just talking to more people, particularly if you're somebody who's quite introverted, if you have difficulty with this stuff. But even if you don't, how much do you actually talk to people outside your social circle? How much do you actually talk to girls that you've never met before, right? So I found myself just actually going and talking to more people, becoming more adept socially. It changed everything for me, because on the first level, yes, it helped me to have a more prolific dating life, which was great. But then it had all these other knock-on effects as well. And the fact that now I'm doing this, and obviously, James, you're doing, what you're doing, and we are in this very privileged position where we are quite mobile. You've taken advantage of that more than I have in the last year. But nevertheless, we are quite mobile. We are able to work from different parts of the world and everything like that. That then segues in, because if you want a great dating life, then that's going to help you to do that. Because if you're able to travel, you're not tied down with an itinerary. You don't have to do the 9 to 5. That's going to allow you to to have a more exciting dating life as well. So the two things kind of work together. But for me, it all starts at socializing. It all comes with getting better with other people.
I like that idea. So if we're going to give guys some kind of practical advice for that, would that be a case of just walking out of your house and trying to banter with 3 or 4 people, regardless of whether they're male, female, animal, cat, dog? Does it matter? Like just practicing being social.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you've got to just get out there and start talking to people. You've got to get the motor running. So you talk to the guy who's working the corner store. You talk to the Uber driver. You talk to the the woman who's working the laundrette. And yes, you also talk to the really cute girl who you notice standing outside the subway station, of course. But it's really, this is what changed my life, because I was so insular before, and I was so incapable in this area. And and I'm not claiming to be perfect now by any means, but if you practice this stuff, you get better at this stuff. It opens up all these different doorways for you. So yes, I think on a very, very basic level, just doing practice runs, going out asking people for directions, going out, just even little things like that, just to build it up. And then slowly work up, start talking to girls, and so on and so forth. And I don't know about you, James, but for me, when I started to get some control in my dating life, then I had the bandwidth then to think about other areas in my life that I also wanted to improve.
I like it. I like that concept. Start with being social first and foremost. I think you should still be going out trying to do day game, but I completely agree with you. Why not try and banter with everyone you come across? I mean, it's that playfulness that's such a key point to being able to speak to girls and having fun and being flirty and teasing. Why not practice that the whole time? Whenever you get the opportunity, making that barista smile, cracking a joke with the girl at the gym or the guy at the gym, just kind of adding value to people's lives, right? Because it's more fun that way as well. It's more fun not to have those boring conversations. It's more fun to inject a bit of humor, because it makes you have a laugh and it makes them have a laugh, and it releases that kind of good feels, that good emotion. I think that's a key point, man. I think just get out and start being sociable. I think a lot of guys, 99% of guys that come into this, they're introverted, aren't they? And they can be like yourself and like me, they can learn to be more extroverted. And that comes from actually socializing. You can't be good at something in life that you don't do frequently. I mean, that sounds like it's, in hindsight, it sounds blatantly obvious, but it took me a while to realize that. Like, I'm not good at something. Oh, yeah, because you don't do it much. Or guys are going, I can't get to the day game. I've been doing it 3 years. It's like, well, how frequently have you been doing it in the last 3 years? Have you done it like once a week and then had like a 3-month sabbatical and then done it another time on a Saturday with the lads, 5 posts, and then, I feel like I haven't. When you actually look at the raw facts about how many hours you spent socializing or talking to girls or talking to other people, how much have you actually done?
Yeah. Well, exactly, and somebody in the comments earlier said something about extroverts have got it easy, or extroverts have got the advantage in this society. And I see what he means, but I don't believe that the divide between extroverts versus introverts is as solid as you think. Because if you think about the classic definition of an introvert, it's somebody who gains energy from being on their own. It's somebody, and I'm still pretty much like that. I like to go home and close the door and be like, I've got some alone time. That's cool. But it doesn't mean I don't like hanging out with people. It doesn't mean I don't like talking to people. And I went from being very, very shy and very, very awkward in those situations. And I just trained myself in such a way that I was able to go out and kind of be the life and soul of the party, even for a period of time. You know, when I was going to clubs and things like this, it's 100% possible. You know, it may not be your default, but you can definitely gain the behaviors. And when you do, you start to get the advantages that come along with them.
So on top of being more sociable, a guy that's looking to kind of, I guess, just try and push himself, assuming he's not going to do the sensible thing and get coaching, which obviously is a no-brainer. You can 10x the speed at which you learn this. You can have someone to give you a step-by-step process, hold you accountable. That's assuming he's just like bastard and he doesn't want to pay money, and he wants to make his own mistakes. You know, apart from being sociable, what else can he be doing? Should he, is there anything else should be like, okay, it's a no-brainer, he does this to try and improve this area of his life?
Do you mean in terms of the, in terms of his dating, in terms of approaches?
Dating approaches, yeah. I mean, for me, it'd be like book a trip somewhere. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. Book a trip. Go solo if you can. I mean, if you can go with other people, go with other people who are going to be approaching. If you can't, then go solo. But just do something a bit different. Break out those old patterns, those old routines, those old habits.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's really, really important. What else was I going to say? You've got to just... I mean, the biggest lessons I learned in game, I suppose. I mean, one of the biggest lessons I think I learned in this whole thing was not trying to hide my intent. You know, was not trying to cover over the fact that if I saw somebody and I was attracted to her, you know, that was the fact, and not owning that. And that was what I did all of those years when I was at school, when I was at uni, in the early days. You know, you'd see this girl and you really liked her, but you would try to sort of keep it a secret because you felt like I can't, you know, you felt very vulnerable in exposing that, in the sense that she's going to go like, oh, it just felt like such a difficult thing to do. And when I flipped that around and I was able to just own the fact that I was interested in somebody and just go and have that conversation with them and be pretty upfront, that was one of the things that changed everything. So I think you've got to just get all right with the fact that being a sexual person, being somebody who's, you know, who's attracted to women and he goes up and he goes for what he wants, that's perfectly fine. And I think that will take you a long way as well.
That's a great point, Mr. Francis. We actually had a donation, our first of the day. Woohoo! We're going to be rich. Richard Alexander says.
Rollo's in the chat. Yeah.
I saw that. Let's do Richard's first, and then we'll say hello to Mr. Tomasi, the legendary Rollo Tomasi. How do you know when to make the right call when one of your plates wants to be exclusive? How do you keep plates without it becoming cheating? I think being honest, just being upfront, right? You can bullshit away and pretend you're being exclusive to a number of girls, and then the house of cards kind of flails and falls to dust, which has happened to me a number of times. You feel like a scumbag. You're always better up front being honest with people, being upfront with them. Would you agree? Yes,
I would agree. Although, if I'm being completely honest, it hasn't been something I've always been very good at over the years. But I think... Yes, I think absolutely. Really, the only way forward really is to just be upfront and just be like, look, this is how it is. This is how I'm choosing to live my life at the moment. If you're cool with it, great. If not, well, fine. I think you need to do that. Yeah.
I think you can buy yourself time, can't you? Initially, like women are always going to push for that. In my experience, within the first 6 weeks to 3 months, you might buy yourself more time if they're a bit younger. And they're not really looking for anything else, but they're going to be. They're going to be pushing for exclusivity eventually, from my experience, and that's kind of like, look, you know, I really like you, but it's not about you, it's about me. I'm just not ready for anything like that. That old spiel you can spin out gives you a further few months, but eventually, you're going to have to kind of manage expectations, and maybe it's a case of the ideal relationship. Who I know someone has got is he's with a girl exclusively. She's not actually bisexual, but she's more than happy to go and pick up girls with him. And so he gets variety every week and having threesomes, and it's a pretty brilliant setup. And he actually really likes the girl he's with as well, and she likes him enough to kind of go with that method. So again, having that strong frame of what you want in a relationship or what you want from seeing people, and then kind of sticking to that and filtering people through that loop, I think is pretty effective. But having a clear definition of what you want, because if you don't really know what you want and you're wishy-washy, that's going to make the whole situation wishy-washy with a number of people you're with as well.
Yeah. That's true. Rollo's saying it's only cheating if you imply exclusivity, which is true. That's a trap that I've fallen into in the past. Because the difficulty you can do is you get into a sort of a relationship with a girl, even if you're just friends with benefits, then it becomes a little bit more, you're spending more time together. And then after a certain point, unless you keep up the old Torero, non-boyfriend rules, like if they're staying over, they're hanging out with you, they're cuddling up on the sofa and stuff like that, by default, you suddenly become the boyfriend. And then, if you're spinning plates, that becomes cheating, effectively. Even if you haven't sat down and had that conversation, even if you guys haven't talked about it. So you've got to just be... But I think what you just said is really important, James, in that having a sense of the kind of life you want to live and then screening for the partners who are going to, or for the women who are going to help you facilitate that is really key. And too many guys, we don't do that because, you're a bit thirsty, you're a bit needy, you think, oh, she's really nice, you want to hang on to her. But is she really the right person in terms of the lifestyle that you want? And that's a really key thing.
And yeah, welcome to Mrs. Massey. I'd love to obviously do something with you for the record. I do recommend your book, The Rational Male, to pretty much everyone as one of the key texts. Like, I'm really not big on giving guys theory, but I think your book, The Rational Male, has been brilliant in kind of summing up those key mindsets and key things that guys need to learn. Particularly, I think that the really key one that flabbergasts a number of men is the whole thing about sexual market peak, right? A guy peaks when he's 36, 37, and most men inherently don't know that, whereas most women do. So I have a number of friends, from my life as an example, who, when they were 34 a few years ago, when the girlfriend turns 30, obviously she inherently knows her biological clock is ticking, she wants kids. She tells Johnny, right, Johnny, it's time to settle down. And as men, no one's told us this. So we need to understand these kind of key tenets that are very deep in our psyche, that someone needs to spell out, and that someone was you. So I think massive buses going past this. It's probably hard to hear me, but in terms of the value you've given in that respect, it's unparalleled. And so yeah, I'd love to have a chat about it on stage. What else we got here? Anything to add, Troy, on that side?
Well, the SMP graph that Rollo put out in that book is just so, like you say, it's so key. And we just don't realize that. I still get guys who will come to me and they'll say, oh, I'm turning 30, in a couple of weeks and I haven't met the one yet. What do I do? And it's like, mate, going into your 30s, it's the best time. I used to think that as well. I remember being 27, 28, thinking, oh, it's nearly all over. Such nonsense. We have a really long run rate. And if you keep yourself in decent shape, if you keep yourself in decent nick, we've got a really long runway. And it's knowing that is really empowering for guys.
I agree. Is there anything else we want to touch on with this kind of hero journey, player journey stuff?
Well, the only other thing I was thinking about was, what do you think we're going to see at the end of the pandemic? Because obviously there has been some talk about we're going to see another roaring 20s. There's going to be a global sex fest going on. Everyone's like getting together, having a great time. Certainly hope so. What do you think about that? And how do you think guys should sort of prepare to be in the best sort of position for that, if that happens?
I mean, I think first things first is, we want to come out of the pandemic, raring to go. And I guess the first thing to be doing in that regard is get vaccinated. I mean, you can shit and whine and do all these conspiracy theories about how it's going to kill you, whatever. I mean, for me, I've always liked traveling. How is it going to be easiest to do that? I'm going to get a vaccine, whatever. So that's the first thing. My hope, it transpires that, around Europe in the summer is going to mirror the microcosm of the fisting tent in The Burning Man, which, it should be an absolute orgy for the masses. I really hope it is. I mean, if you look at, again, I was bang on about this, but I did history at uni, big fan of the Black Death. That seems morbid and weird, doesn't it? But the reports of kind of when places came out of, the plague kind of passed, and you'd have hundreds of thousands of people dying. It was a carnival atmosphere because people appreciate the life's short. This is by no means the same level as that. But I do feel that having been locked down for 8 months, 9 months in the UK as an example, that not only we're thinking it from a man's point of view, aren't we, that we're all socially anxious, our game's dropped, but from women's point of view, they crave the social interaction. They crave sex as much as the next person. So I think personally, Europe in summer is going to be absolutely fucking phenomenal. I cannot wait to see what goes down in June, July, August. I think it's going to be amazing. And I think, guys, you know, this even if you kind of just watch theory for the last 3-4 years and kind of skip taking action, there is now never a better time than to get out and make it happen. I think in 2021, as hopefully we look to come out of the lockdown in Europe around that time.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a book actually called Apollo's Arrow by, what's this guy's name? Apollo's Arrow by Nicholas Christakis, PhD. And it's a book about, he studies pandemics. He's at one of the big American universities. He studies pandemics, history of pandemics, etc. And he basically makes exactly that point. And this got picked up in some of the newspapers in the UK, like the Star. Oh, there's going to be a bonking fest at the end of the pandemic. But basically, he's written a very serious book. But he does make the point that yes, usually what happens, you come to the end of something like this, and people will want to let loose. People want to go out and enjoy that freedom, enjoy that sexuality again. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it? And I think looking at London last year in the summer, because we did open up quite significantly in the summer last year, and there was this kind of carnival atmosphere for a while. And I think we're going to see that again. Countries are kind of going at different speeds with this. I know, you know, France, I think, has gone back into another lockdown, stuff like that. But hopefully we're moving forward in that right direction. And I think there is going to be, you know, a lot of celebration and partying and kind of loose behavior going on just as a reaction to what's happened. So I would say now, if you're sort of sitting at home and you've been eating the proverbial Cheetos for the last, you know, year or whatever, now really is the time to sort of get these things handled. You know, look at your fitness, look at your grooming, your style, and look at your social skills as well, because, you know, we're all going to be going out into this new world in not very long. And this is the time to be sharp. This is the time to be effective. And obviously the key way to do that is through coaching or coming to our London Bootcamp in May. But however you do it, now really is the time to be getting prepared.
Or coming away with me and Troy. I mean, I'll send anyone who's interested in the bootcamp schedule, just send me an email, info@us.com, we'll get in touch with Troy. But we're probably going to run some stuff in July in Russia.
Yes.
Petersburg together, Sochi, the Ibiza of Russia. You're obviously welcome to come and join in Helsinki, Troy, and help out there. We can do something there together. But yeah, I mean, Shane's question, where would be the best place this summer after the pandemic is over?
Well, I mean, anywhere that's open, really. You know, I think anywhere that's anywhere that's open and has few restrictions and stuff, I think wherever it is, you're going to see the reaction again. You're going to see this reaction, you know, because you push something down, you can't push human nature down forever. You know, it's going to come back up again. So, I mean, Berlin last year actually was awesome. I was in Berlin for a while with Tom Torero, and there was just like Tempelhof Field, loads and loads of people out in the park, in the sunshine, loads of sex and stuff going on. It was just crazy, crazy atmosphere. And we're going to see that again, I think, all over Europe.
Were you hiding in the toilets in Berghain on the second floor again? Was that you I saw opening your mouth and someone dumping in it? I recognise that leather harness. I never.
Exactly. Well, you know, God willing, those places, Berghain will be open again, so we can do we should do a Berghain boot camp.
I would love to do a Bootcamp because you can go in there Thursday, can't you? It stays open all weekend. Debauchery after debauchery after debauchery.
Yeah, exactly.
And the entry policy is so random because you have that big guy with a massive face tattoo. And he just stands there and he just nods or shakes his head, and there's no rhyme or reason to his entry policy.
Yeah, it's completely random. There's a couple. By the way, this is a complete segue, but there's a couple of good books there's a bloke called Aaron Sleazy, who's a British guy who's like a dating, pickup kind of guy. And he wrote a couple of books about Berlin and his experiences of dating girls in Berlin. And they're off the hook. Really, really entertaining stuff. Yeah, all these like crazy stories of meeting these different girls and all this stuff. It's really, really enjoyable stuff.
We'll check that out for sure. One place I would highly recommend guys come and check out is actually Helsinki in August. It's the only boot camp alongside Rio Carnival in February that I've run every year for the last 5 years. Because it's so popular. I mean, to give guys who don't know about it in a nutshell what it's about, it's on the tip of the coast of Scandinavia. Their language sounds like something out of the Lord of the Rings. They don't really consider themselves Scandinavian, and the rest of Scandinavia don't really consider them Scandinavian either. It's the least touristy of the Scandinavian countries, but they all speak perfect English, so they want to practice their English. Their social skills are through the roof in terms of their English speaking ability. in terms of women, it's all blonde hair, blue-eyed, in good shape because they hit the gym. It's a very fun place to be. They drink like fishes. They love their drunken karaoke. I've never seen people drink to that level and be so hammered as well. Like you get Saturday night, these absolute stunners, blonde hair, blue eyes, 6 foot tall, tottering on their heels like Bambi and Ice, face planting on the floor. They're so drunk. They love drinking, but also incredibly promiscuous as a place. There's no slut shaming. There's no judgment. Guys will bang around. Women will bang around to a large degree. I took a few guys there who couldn't pull a muscle in London. And I think they all took 4 girls home in like 5 days. Not doing anything special, just because people like to have sex there. It's a very interesting city, very weird culture, but it's really addictive and fun and just a crazy place to go. So I highly recommend coming to join us in Flow Festival this August. We do 1 day at Flow Festival, which is a big music festival in Helsinki. And the benefit of doing that is everyone's there just getting drunk all day in the sun, drinking cider or this thing called Don Caro, this like Finnish cider, Finnish like kind of limoncello kind of stuff. But everyone gets absolutely mullered. And you can literally charge around, get like 40, 50 numbers in a day and just set up dates. It's a great way to build up momentum, set up dates for the rest of the week. And it's a brilliant place if guys are looking just to dip their toe in, because Finnish women are so open and so friendly. You don't get any harsh blowouts. They're so polite. So for a guy that's maybe got a bit of anxiety, especially if you're coming out of the lockdown, it's a fantastic place to go. I know that they were super open. They followed the Swedish model initially, and then they locked down again. But I really anticipate by August it's going to be fully open. There's 3 spaces sold to that. Probably going to take 6 guys, and there'll be myself and 2 other coaches. So really highly consider getting in touch for that one for August. What we might do afterwards is fuck off around and just travel around Finland as well, see some other places. And also just take the boat over to Estonia and have a tear up in Tallinn as well, which would be fun. So yeah, get in touch.
Very nice.
Guys. Yeah. Awesome. Final questions, because we've almost been going 2 hours now. What? Lots of value, isn't it? James and Troy, if you could go back a few years, what advice would you give to guys in his late 20s, dating finance?
Well, for me, one of the key things is rejection doesn't matter. You know, I was so scared of rejection. And actually, this was with women, but it also counted in other parts of my life as well. Like if you submit an article, you want to get published in a magazine, or if you put out a video or something like that, what if people think it's crap? But what you've got to realize is not everyone's rejection and negative feedback doesn't matter. You've got to put your stuff out there. Just keep going. Some people are going to like you, other people aren't, and that's absolutely fine. But in terms of the dating stuff, just don't worry about rejection. Yeah, you're going to get blown out. Sometimes maybe it'll be a bit embarrassing, whatever. Who cares, really? You know, you've got to get that volume into your routine. Otherwise, it's not going to work out well for you. So get that volume in there. Sod rejection. Keep moving forwards.
Very, very, very easy to say, isn't it? To not take it personally. In practice, quite hard to take it not personally. One way I found to keep myself sane was just tracking my numbers and realizing just it's not about that one particular goal.
Yes.
If you approach 20 or 30 women, or sometimes more, sometimes less in a week, and you just have a note on your phone saying, today, 3, the next day, 4. You know that, I mean, for me, I know that every 5 or so numbers I get, I'm going to get a date, probably. So it keeps me sane, because it's very easy to see this constant string of projections as, there's something wrong with me. And you start to take it personally, and it's never to do with you, right? Again, if you're getting like literally 100 girls in a row saying I've got a boyfriend or do one, yes, you need to look at what you do. But if you actually track your rates and they're around like kind of, I guess, 10 approaches, a couple of dates from 10 numbers, a couple of dates from that, maybe 30 approaches gets you, 1 in every 3 gets you a knock-off. And then you're getting, that should be 1 or 2 dates a week, right? If it's wildly off that, then you might need a second opinion. But for me, that kept me sane, because it's very easy to get like a few, say a day of, you get 3 or 4 numbers and they all just say, no, I'm not coming out for a day. It's so easy to think there's something wrong with you, but it's not the case. It's just the numbers part of this is, you're going to get a lot of people saying no for whatever reason. There's so many uncontrollables. It goes back to that kind of stoic sphere of control, right? Control the controllables, forget the rest. What really we can do is see the girl, take that action, try and have fun, try and banter, make it very clear what you want. She either buys into that or she doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any final thoughts, Mr. Francis, before we end?
Oh, thank you very much, Raj. Good to see you, man. Well, I just think that, you know, it's been a rough old 12 months with one thing and another, and the pandemic and the restrictions and stuff like that. But I do think that, you know, this year, going into this year, later into this year, this is summer, is going to be a great opportunity to get out there again, to start enjoying some of the fruits of, you know, socializing and having a good time. And, you know, I think for me, it's a bit like you said earlier, James. Even if you think you only have a 1% chance at success, you may as well just go for it, because what else are you going to do? You know, sit in your bedroom and complain? To hell with that. Get out there, go for it. So I think actually now I'm feeling pretty optimistic. I think we're in a good time. I think that things are going to start to open up, and there's going to be some fun times to be had. So, guys, take advantage and come on our boot camp in May in London.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But just, you know, now is the time. Work on yourself. Prepare for this reopening. You know, and just believe it and get out there and do it.
And for guys that are, you know, thinking about that, oh, it's, you know, oh, it's so harsh, it's so bad. Look at that. For those of you out there, the odds of you being alive today, calculated by some very, very geeky scientists who definitely aren't getting laid, 1 in 400 trillion. So, you know, when you think about it like that, you know, I think the odds of you even being here are ridiculously low, right? So now you're here, as that great poet Eminem once said, you get one shot. Why not make the most of it? Why not take the bull by the horns and just go for it? You know, take the life by the scruff of the neck. Even if you've done fuck all up to this point in time when you're watching this, maybe you're 23, maybe you're 18, maybe you're 33, maybe you're 43, maybe you're 53. If you're not living the life you want to be, why don't you say to yourself, right, well, I'm good, you know, it'd be great to think we're going to get reincarnated as something cool, like a tiger prowling the savannah, or a great white shark, or a dolphin with a blowhole that you can do weird stuff to. But the odds of that happening it's probably not going to fall into place like that, assuming that I'm not religious, and I don't want to go into that whole debate, but assuming that when you die, that is the end. As you say, Troy, you know, even if there is a 1% chance, why not seize the fucking thing by the horns and make the best of it? And really, this relates back to a dating thing, which we bang on about, but it really relates to your life as a man. And there's nothing else to do. I mean, we all know, despite Walt Disney's best efforts at freezing himself and hoping for the best, you know, when it ends. Why not make the boat? Why not just make the most of it? Because none of us are coming out of this game alive.
Yeah,
We've got a limited number of heartbeats, limited number of breaths, and that's game set and match, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, time's going to pass anyway, so you might as well use it productively.
Are you going to do the time, or is the time going to do you? We're going to have one final question, because I think it's a brilliant one to end on, because it kind of goes back to the entire point of what we were trying to talk about, which is this from Sigils. At what point did you feel like you're making the most significant and all practical strides towards your ideal hero destination?
It's a great question. I think it was when I realized that I was able to take some control in my dating life, and by extension in other areas of my life as well. When I realized that I could go up to women and be sociable and be fun and flirty and express my interest in them, and that the sky wasn't going to fall in if I did that, then positive things started to happen for me, because I realized there was some control that I could have. Of course, you can't control everything. She may not like you. She might be married, whatever. But I realized that I could influence the outcome somewhat. And then that led on to in other areas of my life, you know, like in business, in work, thinking, well, okay, well, if I can handle the dating stuff, if I can exert some influence in my dating life, maybe I can exert that influence in my work life as well, in travel, in where I live, in all of these different things. So I would say taking the bull by the horns and taking control of your life, that's the key part.
And what's the one key part, maybe just relating it to day game and dating, where you just thought, okay, yeah, this is actually me on kind of the right path now? Like, was there a particular hot girl you dated, or particular incidents that you had, or was there any kind of moment you remember? Okay, this is actually fucking paying dividends. All the pain, all those hours talking to random people, getting rejected on, you know, lack of messages or fake numbers and all this shit. Was there a point where you're like, okay, I'm not there, and I never will be there, because life's a journey and you've got to enjoy the ride. But I'm enjoying this, and it's actually, my life is different. My life is better because of this.
Well, I remember talking to a girl at a bus stop in Hackney, and she ended up becoming my girlfriend for a period of time, and she was a great girl. We had a really good time together, and she had not given me any indicator of interest or anything like that. She hadn't looked at me. She hadn't even seen me as I was walking along. I started talking to her, did a little bit. I did that, the old, which finger's longer, that shows you're artistic, some kind of cheesy, gamey type stuff. Got her phone number. We end up dating. And off the back of that, I realized that this stuff actually works. And like you were saying as well, I realized that not everyone is going to come off. Not everyone is going to be a success. But when you look at your figures, when you look at your numbers over a period of time, ultimately you are starting to get some regularity. And so if you put in the work, then you get the results. So I think that was probably it for me.
Yeah, for me it was when I was diagnosed HIV positive. I decided I was hanging up my condoms that I'd never used. No, I'm not going to exercise. It was probably when I actually hooked up with a really, really hot girl. It was turned out to be something strange like Miss Club Poland, but genuinely beautiful. And I think for me, that was the point. I was like, Jesus, yeah, some of this stuff is actually possible. Those kind of girls that you see in magazines, those kind of girls that you've never spoken to in your life, having them in bed actually wanting you. This is all possible. You can create this. You can mold it into this. I think for me that was it. Concluding thoughts, Mr. Francis. Get in touch with us. Obviously, emails below. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been really fun actually doing this dual stream thing.
Yeah.
It's gone out to all of our platforms at once. We have our the ultimate Svengali sitting in his web. We have our fingers in many different pies. But yeah, we'll for sure do this again. I don't know what we're going to talk about. We'll come up with something, I'm sure, on the fly. But yeah, I think for guys who are looking, if you want to benefit from me and Troy's collect wisdom in this game, Troy's been doing this doubly as long as I have, but I've still been doing it a number of years now, almost 7, I think. We are running a program late May, Thursday the 20th to Sunday 23rd, 4 hours Thursday, 4 hours Friday, 4 hours Saturday, 4 hours Sunday, all in field training where we beast you through it. London will be open. That's the destination. It's going to be £19.79. We're going to take 4 guys. That's it. If you want to get in touch and discuss that, send either Troy an email here, troyfrancis7laws@gmail.com. Is that the correct one, Troy?
Yes, that one will do. I've also got Troy at realtroyfrancis.com.
Also Troy at realtroyfrancis.com or info@jamestusk.com. And we'll have a little chat, but it's going to be fun. There's nothing else to say, really. Kickstart yourself in 2021. If you'd like to see us do this again, obviously just comment below if you're seeing this in hindsight. Send us an email if there's anything you need. Include your WhatsApp number so we can have a chat on WhatsApp, make it easy. And regards from rainy lockdown Brazil. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. And from it was snowing in London the other day, so it's crazy.
Is it really?
Well, it's like it was sunny, then it's snowing. You know what it's like. I do know
what it's like. But global warming, that's a topic for another day.
Exactly.
Cheers, guys. It's been a pleasure. We'll speak soon.
Cheers.